Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with Dan Paulson, Chief Plateau Buster. So, Dan is making owner's role easier while increasing sales efficiency and profit. So, you can check him out at danpaulsonletsgo.com. He's in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. And yeah, he's the co founder of XCXO and also a co host at Books in the Biz podcast. So, go check him out there. Also, another of his business. He's been CEOs of almost for almost 20 years of that one is IDI, so Envision Development International. We're going to talk about sales today, GTM systems, and everything between. This podcast is brought to you by bookridegpt.com. If you want a book written with your LinkedIn post, you just feed BookRideGPT your own LinkedIn post, and it comes up with a beautiful book that you can publish on Kindle. So bookridegpt.com, we give you a free credit to try it. Dan, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Well, thanks for having me on, Charles. Up to a lot of things today. Two main businesses I own, as you pointed out, Envision Development International. I've had that business for a better part of 20 years. Started out early on working with people on leadership development, coaching, things like that, and then eventually moved into more of an executive coaching role. And now pretty much it helps business owners figure out how to get out of their own way. That's probably the easiest way to put it, and that's also the reason for the title. Uh, as we know, business owners get heavily involved in their companies and in everything they do. Unfortunately, sometimes that takes them away from the most important part, which is figuring out how to grow their business. And when they're not doing that, spending time with friends and family and doing the other things that they're passionate about in their life. So that's the main reason for doing that. The second one, XCXO, was born out of a need to really kind of backfill a lot of experienced positions in the marketplace. We noticed that after COVID, a lot of older people had left. They basically took the retirement option, got out. While that happened, we also had a lot of millennials and Gen Zs that just didn't have the same level of experience, mainly because they hadn't been in the office for several years. So what we're doing is we're looking for those semi-retired executives and hopefully bringing them back in to work on a limited part-time basis as a fractional executive and help train some of these younger people into key leadership roles.
Interesting. So you've been an entrepreneur for the better part of your career. What's got you started in that space? Why not take a 9 to 5 job?
Well, I did work a 9 to 5 job for about 12 years. I spent three consecutive jobs, almost 4 years to the day at each one. Um, the main part about, I guess, the 9 to 5 role is I didn't really enjoy it all that much. I was more of an entrepreneur mindset all the way back then. And what I realized was that my path to career growth was different than maybe my bosses or maybe the business owners. And I wanted to move faster than they did sometimes. So it really kind of came to a point when I was at the last company I was at. We had gone through 2 merger acquisitions. I'd seen all the politics play out. I'd seen the layoffs, and I just said, I don't want to be part of this anymore. There's a better way to do all this, and I'd rather be out helping somebody else figure out how to build and grow their company than work in one job and hope it all pays out at the end.
Right. And your current business, tell me a bit more about your ICP. You mentioned owners, but are you specialized in some specific industries? Are you only doing Wisconsin businesses or national ones?
We're pretty much nationwide, so anywhere within the continental U.S. will happily work with you. In the past, I've been international. Actually, was in China for about 5 years, but decided for now at least to concentrate on this part of the country. So I'm pretty much staying in the U.S. or I have worked with companies in Canada. I take that back. So it's not just here, but for the most part, that's where the primary focus is. And I would say, as far as clients go, I've worked with pretty much any company or any industry out there, but I really like to focus on the ones that get their hands dirty. So I grew up a farm kid going all the way back. And the things I really enjoyed was working with people that like working with their hands. So for me, manufacturing, construction, the trades really are where I gravitate towards because that's just the group I'm more comfortable with.
Right. And why do people hire you? What's your number one thing you're very good at, better than the competition?
Well, I would say that is creating I'll call it a bespoke approach to both coaching and training. So I'll come in. What others will do is they'll come in with a program or a system. They'll start with that system from the beginning. And what I realized when working with companies is they didn't always need everything you put together for them. So my approach really is to come in, assess what's needed, help them figure out where they need to work first, and then we focus on that. I would say the other main difference between what I do and what some other people do is I will actually be hands-on. So typical coaching is you come in, you talk to the owner, you help them figure out what their problem is and figure out how to solve that problem. That's great. What happens though when they either don't have the resource or experience to do that? That's where the second half of what I do comes in. I will actually step in, and that's also where the fractional executive role comes in, help them figure out how to solve some of their problems, but work through that solution by helping them in a hands-on way get control of what the issue is and help them solve it that way.
And for fractional positions, I can understand the interest from an executive side that doesn't want to work full time while still getting paid the big bucks, or having various clients, various companies. My dad's a fractional CMO, but do you feel that on the company side, there's also a need for that? Like, is there really a need to have a bit lower paid person, more experience at the company side? I feel that there's a strong need at the fractional side, at the individual side, but the company side, it's more or less. So do you feel it will also scale with time, that need, or is it not a need?
Yeah, we're actually starting to talk with companies about that now. As you pointed out, there's a lot of individuals who maybe left a career or wanted to do fractional work versus a full-time gig. So yeah, we have a number of people that are willing to sign up on that end. We are finding that there are more and more businesses, especially kind of between, I would say, the $5 million to probably about $30 to $40 million range, where the idea of paying somebody anywhere between $250,000 and $400,000 a year when they might not have that full-time need is a hard pill to swallow. So now here they can get somebody who's got 20 plus years of experience and actually step in, maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. Now, we're also making assumptions that those companies have resources on hand that we can train up, because our goal is to actually eliminate our job. So if we're doing our things right, we're training the people on staff to essentially backfill the position that we're currently involved with. And by that point, what we've hoped to do is create a full-time executive position that somebody in the company can step into within about a 3-year period.
And the fractional, instead of 250K, would be 100K or less.
Could be 100K or less. Yep. All depends on
Okay.
the number of hours, depends on the level of experience, and depends on what you have that person doing.
And can a company fully be ran on fractionals? And aren't these like consultants at the end of the day?
It is a lot of consulting in a way. I think the difference is with the fractional, you're tending to get, again, more hands-on. Consultants just come in and tell you what to do. What we're hoping here is that somebody with experience that enjoys the business, and that's really what we're finding with our associates, is they really love business. The reason they left is because they were in their 50s or early 60s and just decided that they wanted to get out. They didn't want to do it 50 to 60 hours a week anymore, but they really like helping companies grow. So they want to come in and actually help train up that leadership team so they can be more effective at what they do. And that, again, is another thing that a consultant doesn't do. Consultants will tell you what's wrong and then tell you what you need to do to fix it. It's still most of the time on you to actually do that. So that's where this really separates from what I would say consulting is versus a fractional.
I can very much see a future in which a fractional comes with its own AI agents that have been trained on their own experiences, and not only spends a bit of time in the business, but deploys their own agents with their own experience in that business. I think that'd be very valuable for the business.
Yeah, we're starting to use AI a lot more. I use it a lot with some of the training programs we're putting together. You pointed out writing, so it's helpful on writing. Still, I would say it gets me about 50 to 60% of where I need it to be. There's still that personal touch that I think AI hasn't quite got to yet. But when you look at how far it's advanced just within the last couple of years, I think we're going to get pretty close to where, you are going to have somebody or an AI system that can come in and assist with a lot of the operational issues in the future.
And what fractional role have you seen the most popular? Is it fractional CFO, CMO, VP sales?
I would say fractional CFO is still probably the most popular. I mean, it all boils down to the numbers. And even with our situation with XCXO, my business partner, Rich, is a fractional CFO. It's easier for me to refer him work. He opens the door because he gets in there, he finds the numbers, he finds where the savings are, and then that opens the door for us to bring in other people to work on the other issues that they might have. So that's also the benefit of having that CFO in place with us, is we go across the gambit. So once the CFO is in there, he can help determine what's next and where that money comes from to help solve that problem.
And what new roles have we seen in the last couple of years? Which ones are more on the BS side of things and which one are great? For example, we've seen Chief AI Officer, we've seen Chief Diversity Officer, Chief Cultural Officer. Which ones have you seen? Which ones are good? Which ones are more like fluff?
Without getting too political on it, I think the DEI stuff has kind of run its course. I believe that if diversity, equity, inclusion are important in any company, and you're doing it yourself a huge disservice if you're not bringing in people of different cultures or different backgrounds. That said, I don't believe a chief DEI officer is going to necessarily help you there. Now, you brought up AI. I haven't seen a whole lot of those yet, but I'm guessing as AI continues to take more of the lead role in organizations, as far as anything from operational to executive decisions, you're going to see somebody who's going to be managing that. And I think that's where compliance and controls come in internally, where you have a system that basically is self-learning. You're going to have to monitor that and make sure you're getting the results that you want. So that's going to become a more key role.
One of my favorite one is CPO, Chief Product Officer. As I believe, no, but I'm serious about that one because I believe that most companies are straying away from sales and are doubling down on products, on retention, right? And I believe that if the customers are happy, they will refer more customers, and sales is sort of extinguishing with years. What do you think about that thesis?
Exactly. I do see that. I would also say there's still going to be a need for, to me, a live body, because one of the frustrations that I think a lot of people have is AI is really good. AI is going to handle some basic needs. At some point, though, sometimes that needs to escalate to a person. I'm very big on customer service, so I can see the product need happening, but I could also see a customer service component being part of that as well. And maybe it's the same person. Maybe they're combining that role. As people are spending their money nowadays, we hear about tariffs and everything else and inflation and whatnot. They're going to be more choosy about where they put it. So what you need, as you pointed out, is you need an extremely good product for people to work with. And then you also need a customer service experience that is bar none. And a lot of companies, I think, haven't really figured out the service side of it yet. So that's where that part's going to come in. But
I would
AI.
rather.
What? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying I would rather get served by an AI like all hands. Every day I get served by humans, and I compared it with like AI service that can immediately answer my questions. And there's some of that nowadays, just about finding the tech, and it's night and day. For example, yesterday I was on the live chat with my bank. I fed them tons of info, and because I was absent for 5 minutes, they closed the fucking chat, and I had to start all over again. It's so frustrating. So. On the tariff side of things, do you think it's going to be beneficial for U.S. businesses? What about Canadian businesses?
We had a Canadian on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, the one we were doing, and for us, I don't think it's going to be as big of it's going to be a bigger impact short term than it is long term, and the Canadian we had on even agreed with that. In the end, we are still the bigger economy of the two. So I think what you're going to see is things turn around. But at the same point, really outside of the 10% across the board that they came up with last week, that's really all Mexico and Canada have to worry about at this time. And I think things are getting negotiated through. Now, to me, a lot of this is a negotiating tactic. So we're seeing the president, push this through. I think there's probably some better ways to do it, but either way, he's using this as a bargaining tool to get what he wants or what he thinks is best for the U.S. And in some cases, I can agree with what he's trying to do and what he's looking for, because ultimately, really, ideally, you want free trade across the board. If we can trade freely with every country, that's wonderful. The problem is a lot of times we trade more freely than other countries trade with us. So that's where I think you're going to see the difference. And to me, in the next couple months, this is probably all going to work out and we'll be in a better spot.
Do you think the US was in a plateau, and do you think it's going to get better in the next couple of years?
I think it will. I believe it will. I'm in the U.S., so I'm quite hopeful it will. But I see the need for more industrial work coming back to our country for for things like if we look back 5 years ago, the ability to get PPE or pharmaceuticals, a lot of that used to be made here. And the argument was, well, it can't be made anywhere else because then we can't control the quality. Well, then eventually it did migrate to other countries, and now we don't have enough of a pharmaceutical or PPE base here. And when you think about what, again, happened in the last 4 to 5 years, we really need to build that back up. We also need advanced manufacturing. We need more technology built here in the US. Now that becomes a national security issue because if we rely on, for example, China, because they produce a large number of semiconductors and that's the only place we can get them, that could create a problem because we don't always have the best relationships with that country. So in my mind, we do have to do some building up here. Will we replace everything? No, your tennis shoes aren't going to be made in the US. There's going to be a lot of less expensive goods that are probably never going to reshore back here. But at the same point, you're going to see, I think, some key industries start to look at the U.S. as an open market to build products in and to sell to.
And isn't it like the opposite and the other way around of like a national security issue could be of blocking trade and negotiations with China? I feel that it was pretty peaceful in the last couple of years, and actually, what could create conflicts and national security issues for the U.S. would be to start not trading with China, because when you trade with someone, you develop relations, right? If you do
That's
it the
correct.
right way, it's win-win, and everyone's happy. It's just like tourism, right? Like
Yes.
if there's tourism flowing from one country to another, why would we bond each other, right? So isn't it the other way around in which trading actually creates national security?
Well, yes, I agree. That could also be a way to do it. And like I said, it's not that I approve of everything that our current government is doing with it. Um, it's all on speculation of which way is going to be better. When I was traveling to China, I was going there, and I would say the late 2000s, early teens. It was very accommodating for foreigners to go around the country. At the same point, you also know the limitations of the rules of the country you're in. So doing business over there, it wasn't always as free trade as you would think. There were certain requirements you had to do because we were looking to help companies try to onshore in China and build factories over there and whatnot. And there are certain requirements that they have in order for you to build there. There's investment in the country, there's sharing of IP, which then a lot of times does get copied and gets used by other businesses in the country. So while again you think there's this free trade and while you think there's this great relationship, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that are rather costly to business and hurtful. If we're really looking at true free trade, it would be, for example, Charles, I sell you something, there's no tariff, there's no tax on it. What IP I have might be protected. And the same with you. If you sell me something, you should know that good rules of engagement, I'm not going to sit there and copy your product and try to market it and undercut you. That would be the ideal. If we can get to that, I think we've got a perfect world. Now, again, different countries have different ideas of what their perfect world is. So we'll see if that ever comes to play. I do believe at one point we were moving more towards that free trade position, and then it's kind of retreated. And I don't think it's one side versus the other. I think both are looking at their own interests, and that's creating a lot of the conflict that we're seeing right now.
Right. I stayed in China for quite some time. I did business with China as well, the LED lights. And at some point, I started a hoverboard business. So yeah, they're quite familiar. And I remember the firewall there, right? Like you try to use Skype, you can't. You try to use Google, you can't. It was quite annoying. So I do agree with that. I do think, though, that business is war and it's incredibly difficult. So I think entrepreneurs will use like every type of edge, right, including copy pasting what others do. I'm not against copy pasting necessarily. Silicon Valley does it incredibly well, right? Like reverse engineering. I do it incredibly well. Every day I'm researching my competition. I'm trying to do what they do, but not senselessly copying them, right? Trying to improve on what they
Sure.
do and add even more value. And I think that's where competition is quite healthy, right? I call it competition is when we cooperate, but we also compete. And that's beautiful. We don't try to kill each other, but we're like, hey, look at me now. I just did that. Now try to beat me. And I think that's ultimately what creates value. Obviously,
Yeah,
there's always like an extreme in capitalism, right? That starts to break at some point. But yeah, what do you think about that?
no, I agree with you 100% on that. That's really the ideal. I mean, again, we all look at what somebody else does and try to figure out how to do it differently or do it better. And yes, there is reverse engineering. That's one thing. That I think the challenge where all that comes in is really how do we uh, get away from some of the protections that are in place. So you take a look at some of the large corporations. They get large because of tax benefits and certain incentives and whatnot. And the whole point for the government is, well, they're hiring more people. Well, now you take a look at something like an Amazon. Wonderful what Amazon has created. I use Amazon, and it impacts the smaller business. So the small business has to figure out how to compete with that with limited resources. You know, when we look back even 30, 40 years, most of the business you did was probably within your community or within your county, maybe your state. You really didn't have the breadth of business that you can do now. So the positive is you can pretty much go anywhere. The negative side is as these companies, these larger companies grow, they go anywhere too. It's no longer just about working within their city, state, or country. It's now expanding beyond that. What these larger companies have figured out to do is they built the service model and they've designed structures that really have helped them grow and help them sell. And I think that's where, you know, smaller, medium-sized companies need to look at that and figure out how can they develop something that's similar but better. And that's, like I said, we're you know, we were talking about product and service models. I think that's where that's going to come in, where small to medium-sized companies really can have the edge if they do it right. So to your banking situation, you know, where you contact the banker, they didn't have any idea what's going on, and then they hang up on you. Well, to me, that's a sign that they're not taking the right approach about this, and they're not looking at the right way. However, if you get the right individual in the banking world that sees that as a problem, they're going to figure out ways to fix it. They're going to use things like AI. They're going to use things like human beings. They're going to figure out what's going to be the best formula of both to really solve your problem, so that way you are going to be happier with the results you're given.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, it's extremely cutthroat to start a business nowadays, but we have tools like ChatGPT, right? In which you can
Exactly.
learn anything and you can get really deep into niche topic real quick. So do you think it is more fair in business nowadays? Do you think it is easier than it was before? Has there never been a better time than nowadays to start an actual business?
AI is going to level a lot of things, and as you point out, ChatGPT, it's a tool that I use. There's Grok. There's a number of other tools that are very specific to everything from video graphics to imagery to research and development. You name it. It is going to definitely be helpful because that's a great way to utilize the power of AI and lower some development costs, some training costs, different issues that you might have to deal with where you'd have to hire bodies before. You can now replace that with an AI tool. I don't think you can replace it 100% because we're still human beings. We still need a human connection. So to me, it's an add-on. It's something that can reduce time anywhere from 20 to 60% in some ways on training development. But even then, I found that there's still a lot of that human factor involved when, for example, working on training, you're dealing with human beings. You can use the AI to kind of create the template or the outline, but it still doesn't replace personal experience and your own knowledge that you can share with that individual. AI is very good at, again, the general topics. And that's where I think it becomes helpful, because even if you don't have, you know, AI hasn't quite got to where you need to be yet, it can still get you a long ways for a minimal cost if you're willing to put in the effort with it.
And yeah, you mentioned trades. I use ChatGPT for a bunch of things, to fix my motocross, to fix stuff around the house and take pictures of things. Do you feel that people in trades are also doing that nowadays, bring their phone to work and fixing problems with ChatGPT and their camera?
They're taking lots of pictures now. I don't know how much they're using ChatGPT or anything like that yet. I know AI is becoming a bigger, becoming more, there's more awareness within the construction fields on that. They're really just starting to catch up to using technology, things like application software, having an iPad or a tablet in the field versus just having a notebook and handwritten invoices and everything else like that. I mean, I still see a fair amount of that, but the companies that are growing are looking at how to use technology more effectively. Where I think you're going to see ChatGPT or something like that come in early on, writing of contracts, reviewing of contracts, things that would be more tedious and require more time to do. I don't know if there's anything there that can go over a blueprint, make sure that everything from structural soundness to,
Oh yes,
you know, is there?
100%.
But well, then that is something that's going to definitely be taking more of a leadership role on it, because that's usually the biggest problem is there's a mistake made on the blueprint or there's a mistake in the field. Somebody doesn't catch that, then that's a costly rework and it slows down the whole build process.
Yeah, and in XR, I believe Microsoft was at the front end with HoloLens, and that's why their ChatGPT their OpenAI acquisition was genius, right? Because now they can integrate directly these into these lens and feed real-time information about what the user is seeing and what question they have with voice option. I think that's genius. I had the CEO of Spot.ai on my podcast. They plug AI into the cameras of the business, and they can even film the supply chain and film like, okay, the truck arrived at 11 a.m. today, and that's all fed to an AI, and the AI is like the brain of what's happening in the business. It's like literally an operations manager. I think that's genius. One last question for you before we go. Sure. Entrepreneurs and CEOs, they all hit a plateau, whether it's in their personal and business life. What generally is your number one solution when you hit a plateau to get out of the mud, sort of?
Well, the main thing is getting out of your own way, as I often say. And the reason for that is when we get in our business, we get so focused on what we do and how we do it that often we don't look for other options or other solutions. For example, I was doing some training last week, and there was one gentleman that I was trying to explain different leadership tools to, and he became very frustrated because it was like what he was doing was the only way to do it. And when you have the blinders on and you can only see what's in front of you, you need to take a step back. You need to look around. You need to slow down. I tell people a lot of times you need to slow down to go fast. And if you're racing too far ahead, you're missing a lot of the key issues that are happening around you, and that's creating a lot of the problems. So one of the first tools I use is try to get that owner to slow down, take a deep breath, look around at what's going on, and really start digging into their business, and not just what's right in front of them or the most important fire right now, but what are all the other issues that led to creation of that fire in the first place.
Yeah, I like that. I can identify to that a lot. And yeah, I stepped back recently, eagle's eye view on what was going on in my business, identify the fires that were burning, fix them, and now it's going great again. So I think, yeah, consciousness, right, and open-mindedness and not being so egotistic and attached to the solution. I think that helps a lot. Great advice there. Dan, where can people find out more about you?
I'll give you the easy one. So since XCXO is the new thing, and that's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of me, visit XCXO.net, and you can reach me at dan@XCXO.net, and that's probably the best way to find me.
So that